I rewrote my combat system. Why? The first principle of games is that the only thing that actually matters is how you make the player feel. Let's look at a couple examples. Chess can make you feel smart. Competitive games feed your pride or piss you off. Scary games give you that adrenaline kick. And tabs makes you laugh. I bring this up because while the combat can create hilarious and cool moments, on average it's just meh. There are not enough events in the code that would let me make the cool stuff happen more reliably. But instead, I have to hope that something cool happens with the physics, which is not that often. Plus, even if something cool does happen, following up is like doing nuclear physics, where if you mess up even tiny bit, you're suddenly looking at the meltdown, or in this case, you dash to the other side of the world and die. I came to the conclusion that the problem lies within the player controller. In the early days, I had a very simple requirement. I just needed something that would let me move around and cast a variety of different abilities. But now that I'm trying to build a fully functional demo of the game, this is no longer enough. So the old player controller needs to go. I started attacking this problem by changing the melee aiming from always facing the camera look direction to attack in front of the player. And this is great, because now there's a minigame where you have to orient yourself correctly before you start attacking, instead of just spamming your mouse mindlessly. The greatest benefit of this change is that the player can keep the camera in one angle, as it was reported that the camera would cause motion sickness during playtesting, because you would have to move it so much just to aim, especially if the camera had to avoid collision from the terrain when aiming. To address this issue, I made the camera switch automatically to the shoulder mode if you were looking up. This works great for both short and long range combat. Switching cameras like this is actually surprisingly easy, because I'm using the Unity Cinemachine toolkit, and the way it works, you enable the camera controller that you want to have authority over the camera movement. And all the hard lifting of position and rotation calculation is done by the Cinemachine component that you just enabled. This is a free plugin that you can get in your project immediately in the Unity Package Manager, and I cannot recommend it enough. But even with this change, aiming still feels like a workout, because if you aim 2 units to the left from where the hitbox is, you will still end up missing. So I ended up implementing a minor aim assist by giving every enemy a trigger box collider that was bigger than the humanoid muscle colliders. And if the camera raycast were to hit the aim assist collider, I would correct the aim position to the nearest puzzle. But speaking of aim assist, I also experimented with target locking. This is a little bit questionable if it's going to stay in the game, but it does make certain combos easier to execute. Also, I could utilize the target flying away as a means to pause the enemies to give the player a moment to breathe, in otherwise very intense combat situation. These are definitely steps to the right direction to have a solid combat in the game, but the combat needs to look satisfying. Let's take a look at how that went. I started by adding a way to blend a full body animation with upper body animation, with the Unity animator masks. The way it works, animation would start as a full body animation, and then I would define a point where, if the player was moving, it would also blend the upper body only layer, moving the legs while still doing the attack animation. The leg movement is by no means perfect, but at least it feels responsive now. There is an argument to be made that the leg movement should be procedural, and that's how the spiders in the game work, but I'm very inexperienced in this area. And considering how much trouble the physics is giving me, it would have to be in the future, but fingers crossed I could start looking into it ASAP. Next up, the punching needs a bit more weight to it. I achieved this by keeping the arm stretched out for a couple more seconds by pausing the animation at the right time. You can control the animation flow by setting the motion time as a float variable. This is normalized float between 0 and 1, with 0 being the very beginning of the animation and 1 being the end of the animation. This is one of those things that make the combat feel great, but if you're just playing games, you don't necessarily pay attention to it or realize why the combat is so great. So I asked myself, is there something else I am totally missing? Well, obviously, I wanted to have all the hit reactions to be physical, but I'm gonna be honest with you, it doesn't look very good. So I experimented with just a standard hit reaction animation, and to my surprise, it actually wasn't that great either, because the reaction looks like it's delayed by a lot. To go around this problem, I tried using instant reaction pose with 0 transition time, and it worked perfectly. For the first time ever when making this game, I could say, wow. Punching enemies feels pretty great. I'll still keep the physical hit reaction around for bigger enemies and migrate them over to everyone once I am smarter. Currently the main problem with full physical reactions is the fact that when I get them working for one monster, they would break on someone else. There is nothing worse than when you expect the enemy to fall in a certain way and then it doesn't happen. But when it works, it has the potential to create the coolest looking action sequences ever. With the extra spice provided by the ragdolls, crazy abilities, explosiveness, it's guaranteed that the game will never play the same way on playthroughs. But as we speak, it's way too unstable. But speaking of crazy abilities, this is where the new ability upgrade system would come in, as I want the player appearance to change drastically when you get more powerful. The ability upgrade points would have to be unlocked from equipment. Nothing screams superhero more than a silly looking outfit. If the ability you just used looks like it should deal damage, you should also look like you could pack a punch. Think of it as ability crafting, and the stuff you wear is the building blocks to craft those abilities. Let me give you an example. You start off with a simple energy blast, you equip something that gives you speed, and now you can spam said energy blast. Add speed once more, and now you spin and spawn energy blasts everywhere. If the machine gun is not your playstyle, you can choose a different upgrade route. Again, start with a simple energy blast, add damage to get a medium blast, and damage once more to get a giant explosion. And to get the laser beam, you would upgrade the medium blast with speed. The pattern here is, there is a clear visual difference how the player and the abilities are. And that's gonna be it for this video. I will talk about these ability system more in the next video. In the meantime, consider giving my game a wishlist on Steam. I'll make a new gameplay trailer as soon as I'm done with the combat and graphics rehauls. And I do wanna expand my playtesting effort once the game is less obviously buggy. Thank you for watching, until next time, take care.